Long ago, Hollow Knight came out, a love child of 3 creative individuals under the parental name Team Cherry. At first, it didn't make any numbers in the gaming sphere and kind of existed in the niche of indie games. But after a certain ass mentioned it in one of his videos,
Hollow Knight is pretty much just Dark Souls.
And a certain buggy moss scoured the game's deep lore,
I forget sometimes about the other important details, like what his naked body looks like.
people found out a fantastic 2D Souls-like with cute bugs and a general neutral protagonist. I can't believe they made Hollow Knight woke. They still get more games than you though. Traversing a zombified kingdom with fantastic boss fights and a killer soundtrack. With their first development project, Team Cherry made an impact in the gaming sphere, having so much quality content for an indie game that AAA games would be put to shame. Wait, an unready button? A server lobby? That's crazy, what are those? Also helps that the game's future DLC and expansions were completely free, therefore the audience loved the game even more. Said expansions were part of Kickstarter goals that have been set up to fund Hollow Knight. One of those goals was a second playable character for the game, Hornet, who has never become a playable character to this day. God forbid women do anything. And that's because Team Cherry wanted her to be a heroine of her own title, Hollow Knight Silksong, a sequel prequel that wanted to expand on the combat system of the original game, as well as to potentially add to the Hollow Knight lore and reveal potential answers to a lot of unanswered questions. For example, how could the Pale King pull so much game? Silksong has gotten trailers, a playable demo, and a lot of coverage by a lot of popular media outlets. And then the game didn't come out. Little known news raised the ears of the fan base, and the only people who kept up with the game were left in the state of absolute insanity. A fate worse than death, as being a genuine fan of Silksong, Arkham games, and Deltarune has never been much harder than this.
Officer Bowles.
What does this situation teach us? Is it after you get a gifted child you should stop after one? No. Have sex. I think a lot of people would be more calm regarding Silksong and its delays if Team Cherry made more frequent development posts of the game's state. Toby Fox has Deltarune in the making for a decade now, and he has been pretty vocal about the game's progress. Although, please check up on him. I think his mental state has taken a toll. I don't know what this is. To me, Silksong is the best cautionary tale of sequel culture, the consequence of ambition and the fear of being a letdown. Ambition in the sense that if you were to release a sequel, you better have a good reason to do so. A lot of people don't eat seasonal franchises like they used to. Assassin's Creed or Call of Duty, people stopped caring about numbers for these games long ago. You can't just pull a new game, slap a new number on it, and just call it a day. People won't buy that, except FIFA fans. Also, jumpscared the Americans. This is called football. Cope and see. Sequels to series like God of War or Metal Gear were released for the audience when those games had something to improve, innovate, or conclude. We don't talk about you. You're like Liquid Snake of Metal Gear games. Imagine releasing a zombie game in 2018 and you didn't even have an awesome lesbian couple and an evil, intimidating Abby. Even The Last of Us Part 2, a game I have very strong feelings on, which means I didn't like it, but I respect people who enjoyed it, is deserving to be called a proper sequel, at the very least due to how graphically and gameplay-wise the game has improved compared to The Last of Us Part 1. Let alone we forget the little quality of changes the game added, like each NPC uniquely begging for their lives when you put iron through their skulls. Just puts joy into my face. But do we need remasters and remakes of games that were 3 years old at the time of the release? And I must say, adding a golf mini-game was a bold choice. GTA 5 did it and not a lot of people liked it. Leave that hobby to the rich and Italians. But where does ambition end? Valve is considered the best gaming studio of the past decades, mostly with their strategy of making nothing and watching the competition burn. You know the history. Half-Life came out, was a revolutionary game of its time, then Valve decided to spend a good decade on an engine so good that people like to use it for animation to this day, for better or worse, just to make a sequel to Half-Life. Keep in mind, the studio went this far because they wanted to justify legit improvements for a second installment. So when Half-Life 2 Episode 2 came out, Episode 3 later turned to Half-Life 3 and then didn't come out at all. A lot of people would consider the series abandoned, only left in the memories of Source RGs and Skibidi Toilet. If Half-Life Alyx hasn't been released. A VR game so good and so visually and gameplay pleasing that it honestly raised expectations for VR gaming. Also would justify you buying the VR in the first place instead of playing VR chat maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sticking a knife on your eyes. I guess it would, yeah.
Because I have phantom pain!
Also, Alex completely has redone the ending of episode 2 of Half-Life 2 because I'm Game Jewel and I do what I want. Here's a physical Switch emulator to play Mario Sunshine and a sequel to Counter-Strike that'll have a content support team the size of Team Fortress 2, which is a janitor and a plant. To be fair, Valve has seemingly gotten more proactive. Good for them. They're developing their own hero shooter, actually finished the Team Fortress 2 comic series on a really wholesome and nice note, and also seemingly started making games again. But that brings us to expectations. The longer you make a game, the more people will expect from it. Some franchises manage to keep their fans happy for a very long time, like God of War that had Kratos going through an anger boner and then a big post-nat clarity in the Norse duology. A big narrative and gameplay change that a lot of people were seemingly okay with, also because the game still felt true to its origin. On the other hand, we have The Last of Us Part 2, which clearly divided the community into normal people who really like the game, normal people who dislike the game, and no-life nerds who've never gotten a pussy before in their entire life. Really, imagine being such a fucking loser that you hate a game for like, what, 4 years now? Have sex and calm down, jeez. But in the defense of The Last of Us Part 2, you have to keep into account that you can't really please everyone. That's the worst part of making a sequel. You have to see the defining features that made your game so beloved and keep note of them when making a sequel. Don't reinvent the wheel, but add to it, except adding spikes and skeletons to it. Miyazaki will implement like a mechanic where a video game actively punches me in the balls, and I'll still call it like the game of the year. From Software, under the direction of Miyazaki, has possibly one of the most impressive gaming streaks of all time. Demon's Souls, Dark Souls 1, Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, Sekiro. Wait, what? Hold on? What? Yeah, Miyazaki didn't work on the second game's Dark Souls trilogy, leaving it to Yuji Tanimura, something J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson would shamelessly steal when working on the Star Wars sequels. But unlike the sequels trilogy,
somehow Palpatine returned.
Dark Souls is still regarded warmly and welcoming, even with the second game being inferior in regard to other titles. While Miyazaki was working on his little hot topic game before Vivzy Pop would claim the golf market and 1,000 YouTubers would leech off of her by calling her series bad, Yuji was handed a From Software B team that had to surpass expectations of Dark Souls 1 and also improve on the pre-existing ground. And while the game failed to keep up with the promises of the promotional material, something Cyberpunk 2077 would also shamelessly steal and have been criticized for having some of the most poorly designed bosses in Souls history. Hold on. We have this boss? Yeah, just put him again and like add another one to it. Add another one, yeah. Just make 2 of them. There's no good changes, just have 2 of them. Some of the ideas of Dark Souls 2 were actually so good that they were used for later titles. Hell, even Elden Ring Nightreign solely exists due to the fact that the seamless co-op mode has become so popular among the community. But let's be honest here, Miyazaki just wanted to add more barefoot women to his catalog. Listen Miyazaki, I know you like partnering with other creative individuals from the media sphere like G.R. Martin, but have you considered partnering with Tarantino? I think both you would get along so fine. But let's be real here. When someone says sequel, people usually expect a continuation of the original work and mostly with the same cast and following where the old plot left. Is it possible to create a piece of franchise that actually has a cohesive narrative and feels like an actual continuation of the previous games with improved gameplay elements that new fans can get easily into without the need to replay previous games? What do you think, Geralt? The Witcher game series is regarded as one of the best examples of a perfect gaming franchise. Despite the games having long periods of time before the release, each title feels like an improvement to the previous game. From the clunky gameplay of Witcher 1 to mediocre gameplay of Witcher 2 to well-balanced combat system of Witcher 3. And unlike most games, it really feels like the Witcher series was worked by the same team through the whole development process. It generally is rare to see a series that understands its roots, respects them, and lets them flourish into something wonderful. And I'm glad The Witcher 4 looks like a promising spiritual successor to the games that came before it. CD Projekt Red is one of the few gaming companies that still likes making games. Yeah, they followed Cyberpunk's release, but they fixed it, meaning the game had something good to begin with. Go back to Miyazaki. You might have noticed that he hasn't worked on Dark Souls 2. And while some people believe it's because he was busy with Bloodborne, In reality, he had no interest in making a sequel to his original title. Yes, he may expand his games with a DLC or an expansion, but he really dislikes the idea of making a proper sequel for his titles. His games are finite, and that's what makes him beautiful in his eyes. And I fully respect that decision, but at the same time, some creative leads don't really have a choice when making a sequel. A lot of people are leaving or are forced to leave the workplace they've stayed at for a very good part of their lives. BioWare has veterans moving to different companies due to EA mismanagement, Arcane shuts down due to incompetence of Bethesda and Microsoft, and Kojima is forced to abandon Silent Hills and his long-running Metal Gear series. The audience wants a sequel. The executive team wants a sequel, but not everyone wants to make one. Not everyone can make one. If you like what you watched, supporting the channel would be greatly appreciated. Liking and subscribing is honestly enough, and I'm glad to have people supporting what I like making. But if you'd like to fund the channel to produce similar content, I have a donation page linked down below. All proceedings will go to improving the channel's quality. Current plans are to ensure that I have enough money for food and rent, obviously, in order to make this channel do a job I'd like to have. Afterwards, I plan to hire editors to assist with the channel and to produce content at a faster pace, as well as to potentially make a model update. Thank you for watching. I have no idea how much your support means to me. Thank you.